3 cheers for His Majesty the King. Hip, hip. Hooray! Hip, hip. Hooray! Hip, hip. Hooray!
While we've all been coming to terms with the news that Queen Elizabeth has died, our country has been welcoming a new king.
Yeah, King Charles III. I mean, I didn't realise how fast it happens. But as always, FYI's got all the info for you.
I'm in London, and I'll be going inside there, the Houses of Parliament, to find out what a state funeral is like from someone who knows all about it.
And not far away, I'll be talking to some of you who have come to Buckingham Palace to pay your respects.
And we've got a new king. But what exactly does it mean to be the head of state? If you don't get it, my report should help. So much has happened in the last few days, hasn't it?
Yeah, we were just getting used to our new Prime Minister, Liz Truss, when just 2 days after this picture was taken, the Queen died.
And if you've not watched our special edition of FYI, Remembering the Queen, then you can still watch it on Sky Kids On Demand and on our webpage at first.news/FYI. The sad news meant this happened for the first time in 70 years. It was a proclamation.
What's a proclamation?
So basically, before they had TV, social media, or even radio, it seems the way to announce a new monarch was to shout and blow trumpets.
Our only lawful and rightful liege lord, Charles III.
The tradition brings together all the past prime ministers and our new one, huddled into a small room at St James's Palace. It's quite strange to see them together like this.
Yeah, and did you notice most of them were wearing black?
Yeah.
Well, that's the traditional colour when people are mourning. All sorts of places have changed their colours too. In Australia, the Sydney Opera House usually looks like this, but last week it looked like this. Lots of other buildings did it too, from the Tower of London to the Empire State Building in New York.
They're just some examples of people and countries showing their thanks to the Queen. Another way to pay respect is to file past the Queen's coffin. It was first taken to Edinburgh so Scotland could say goodbye. It was then taken to London, and Thomas can show us the route it took. Hey Thomas, you there?
Yes, I'm on the Mall, which is the long road that leads to Buckingham Palace.
The tradition is that any news about the royal family is displayed on the gates of Buckingham Palace. And from the moment the announcement was made, people have been heading here.
And I want to find out why they're all coming.
I forced my parents to come here today because we're literally living through history.
To me, the Queen was a very important and special person in my life because she was the Queen when I was born.
She did a lot for society and she went to lots of charity events, and it doesn't really feel real that she's gone.
So many flowers have been brought there now, filling Green Park next to the palace. And they go on forever. Mirabelle and Yusuf are just the latest to bring their tributes.
We should mark the Queen's death because she reigned for 70 years on the throne, the longest in British history, and it's highly unlikely that we'll see that again in our lifetime.
What were your guys' favourite memories of the Queen?
Mine has to be the 2012 Olympics. Love that so much. The one where she jumped out of the helicopter with James Bond made me laugh when I first saw it. I think it really shows the connection between her and the people.
Mine was the clip with Paddington Bear, where they had tea and the marmalade sandwich. That one brought a lot of enjoyment and happiness.
Paddington and marmalade sandwiches are everywhere. It seems the Queen's sense of humour will not be forgotten, and her starring role at the Jubilee is still making people smile. And I think Paddington Bear said it perfectly.
Thanks, Thomas. Now, Buckingham Palace have said that there are loads of Paddington Bears in Green Park now, so please keep yours and these marmalade sandwiches at home. Hear that, Paddington?
Paddington Bear's been popping up all over the place. Look at this, Braydon.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's a picture of Paddington Bear made out of shells and pebbles. It took 6 hours to plan and 4 hours to make. And if you want to share your tribute with us, then head to first.news/FYI.
Still to come, I'm inside the Palace of Westminster to find out all about the state funeral of Queen Elizabeth.
But first, if you don't get what's going on, this might help. For the last 70 years, Queen Elizabeth is all we, our parents, and even our grandparents have known. But now we have to get used to a king, King Charles III. The monarch is also the head of state. And though they are head, confusingly, that doesn't mean they hold the most power.
God save the king!
I'm going to need a bit of help getting my head around this, and I know just the person.
Hello, Braydon.
Hello. So, how much power does the British monarch actually have?
Well, the monarch is a really important figurehead here in the UK. If you think about it, the Queen's portrait has been on our coins, our banknotes, and our stamps probably for longer than most people can remember. But actually, when it comes to things like making laws, it is largely a ceremonial role. For example, the monarch every week has a private meeting with the Prime Minister, but it's not the monarch's responsibility to tell the Prime Minister what to do. They are there to advise, encourage, and to warn. They have that very important role as well of giving out honours to people who've been doing good work up and down the country and carrying out visits to shine a light on important community projects. Now, the monarch is also Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, but it doesn't mean it's their responsibility to start wars. That comes down to the UK government, which of course is voted for by UK adults as part of our democracy.
Well, thank you very much. OK, so I get all of that, but what I'm really scratching my head about is how all this royal family stuff even started. So I'm going to take us back in time for a quick history lesson. You've heard of 1066, right? That was the year the French invaded England in what was called the Norman Conquest. Having won the battle, this guy, William the Conqueror, was made King of England, even though he could hardly speak any English. Since then, there have been loads of battles over who has control of the throne, and some untimely deaths. So lots of different kings and queens. Some of my favourites are Richard II, who was only 10 when he was crowned. Imagine that. Henry VIII, who had 6 wives, and Elizabeth I, who fought off an attempt to overthrow her when the Spanish Armada sailed towards England. Queen Elizabeth II automatically became queen as soon as her father died. Her coronation took place a year later in 1953. Now she has died, Charles, as her first son, automatically becomes king. So the rules are that to become our head of state, you have to be born into the royal family. You also have to be Christian, because ever since the reign of Henry VIII, part of the role is to be the defender of the faith. The British monarch is the supreme governor of the Church of England, but they also recognise and celebrate other faiths. As for other countries, well, they all have their own systems to decide who becomes their head of state. For example, in Saudi Arabia, King Salman bin Abdulaziz has absolute power, and there's never been a national election. And in countries like the USA, Brazil and Nigeria, the head of state is the president, elected by the people with power to run the country and make new laws. The system here in the UK is not without its critics, who say it's outdated and too expensive, but others argue that we really benefit from having the monarchy. It allows the politicians to get on with running the country without too many distractions, and having a royal family with all its traditions makes the UK stand out in the world.
On Monday, the whole world will be watching London as we say goodbye to Queen Elizabeth. I've heard that even the President of the United States, Joe Biden, is coming.
Also the leaders of Australia, New Zealand and Canada. However, these countries are a little bit different because the Queen is also their head of state. The Queen is also on their money, so this is a $20 Canadian note.
Get you with your international money. So yeah, money and stamps, they're going to change so that they can have King Charles's face on it.
Now we've checked with the Royal Mail and it's officially down to the King to decide whether he wants his left side or his right side of his face on the stamp, whichever side he thinks he looks best in.
But with money, the Royal Mint tells us that tradition is that the direction the monarch faces changes each time. So expect for King Charles to be looking the other way.
Well, that's a good point. And finally, did you see this?
Oh yeah, so when you become a cub or a brownie, you have to make a promise to the Queen. So let me guess, these are the first people to make a promise to the King.
That's it. Now it takes a bit of getting used to say King Charles. However, he's been preparing for his job all his life. When he was my age, he knew he was going to be king. He's 73 years old now, and he spent his life taking an interest in all sorts of subjects. He's even got a species of frog named after him. He set up a charity called the Prince's Trust, which helps young people. But perhaps he's most well known for being one of the first important figures to stand up for the climate.
Last year, he introduced a Sky Kids documentary about the impact of climate change on young people, called In Your Hands.
I'm delighted that in this film, we'll be hearing from 6 young climate activists from 6 different continents.
Though he still cares about the planet, he's already announced that he's focused on the job of being king.
Yeah, and his next job as king is to lead the state funeral. So we're catching up with Scarlett, who's inside the Houses of Parliament. Hey Scarlett, where are you?
I'm in a part of the building called Speaker's House. It's right near Westminster Hall, the building where the Queen is lying in state. The coffin arrived here on Wednesday and I was outside watching it. The new king and the royal family followed in procession from Buckingham Palace. Thomas was in the crowd too, as it travelled along the Mall. The coffin was draped in the royal standard flag. Placed on top was the crown worn by the Queen at her coronation in 1953.
Seeing the procession was an honour. To be here and watch it. It was really special to see a moment in history like that.
Because it was so busy, I ended up here in Hyde Park, watching on these screens.
How does it feel being able to be here today?
Really special because we get to see the last moments that we can see of the Queen.
I feel like the time right now is when it actually feels real, when you're seeing the whole royal family marching and the gunshots being fired, and it feels like time has stopped. The coffin will remain at Westminster Hall until the funeral takes place.
And then a procession will take the coffin to Westminster Abbey, where at 11 a.m. the state funeral service will take place and be shown on TV. The day will be a bank holiday, so we'll be off school.
The last time there was a state funeral for a monarch was in 1952, for King George VI. So this is the first time we'll see one. So what's it going to be like?
Welcome to Speaker's Apartments.
I've come to meet someone who can help me. This is Trisha, the Speaker's chaplain. Her job is to say the prayers in the House of Commons, but she also works at Westminster Abbey, where the state funeral will take place. So what is a funeral?
So obviously when someone we really love dies, it's a time of sadness, but also of all kinds of feelings. And a funeral is really an opportunity for people to come together to be with one another, to remember the person that they've loved.
What happens at a funeral?
Well, in a Christian funeral, like the one we're about to see, typically there'd be candles lit, those symbolise hope. There'd be music and lots of it. There'd be lots of words said. There'd also be silence, and there'd be prayers said, of course.
Funerals are an important time for families to mourn. So William, Harry, and the rest of the family will be there. But because this is a funeral for a monarch, this service is also for the whole country. So this is a state funeral. Will it be any different?
So there'll be a couple of thousand in the Abbey, but beyond that, there could be billions around the world watching, listening in. So it really is one of those unique moments in our world history, actually.
So what will you be doing on Monday?
Yeah, so on Monday I'll be in the Abbey. I'll be there at the service, part of the clergy team who are serving in the service.
As the Queen's funeral comes to an end, we are all invited to join in a national 2-minute silence. It's another way we can show our respect.
Thanks, Scarlett. So where are you now?
Well, I've left the Houses of Parliament and this is the queue of people waiting to file past the Queen's coffin. They've been here for ages and it just shows how much the Queen meant to so many people.
It was very last minute, but last night we decided that we thought we'd pay our respects to the Queen and come over.
How does it make you feel being here today?
It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity and it's really great to be here.
Thanks, Scarlett. And here's Thomas.
I've escaped the crowds, and the day after the funeral, the period of national mourning will be finished, and flags like this one will fly at the top of the pole again. And after talking to lots of you, there's one thing for sure. We'll never forget the Queen.
Well, that's it from us today, but we're going to leave you with some of your thoughts about the Queen. Bye!
She was here the first 13 years of my life, so it's really sad that she's gone.
She was the longest reigning monarch and she also was kind to animals.
She was probably the last female monarch I'm going to be alive to see.
This is a message to King Charles. Sorry for the loss of your mother and long live King Charles III.